First session for the day, I had the delight of chatting to Richard Halton last week. As I mentioned, he is driving a project called Project Origin, which ISBA have launched off the back of a lot of work that the WFA, so the Worldwide Federation of Advertisers, have been doing around cross-media measurement. I think most people on the conference call would know that we've talked about cross-media measurement solutions for many, many years now, and they can mean many things to many different people. The encouraging thing that the work with the WFA has done is really, I guess, make the advertisers answer what is it you want. And hopefully some of you have seen the framework that they came out with, their global principles for cross-media measurement, which really tried to pinpoint the main criteria that's needed in the industry. And even, the question of, answering the question, what do they want, which most advertisers will say sort of an unduplicated reach and frequency across all media, which as we know is not an easy thing to do, but there's nuance in that, whether it's content or ads, if you have comparable metrics, if it's independent data or a collaboration of first-party data. So the guys in the UK have really taken the bull by the horns and taken this framework and tried to work with some of the solutions that the WFA have been working on and look what it can mean for the UK market. So I'm going to play a short video with Richard and then we're going to go into a panel where we'll pull out from a solution-based and look at sort of that broader piece for marketers. So I will launch this video. Please add questions if you need.
Right.
Morning, Richard. Welcome to the IAB MeasureUp conference.
Morning.
Oops.
Good to be here.
We're really excited about this session. We've been hearing about this project through whispers and rumours for a couple of years now. I've been working in media measurement for 25 years, and I think we've been talking about cross-media measurement ever since I started in the industry, working at portals that were connected to TV stations and magazines, trying to get a solution. So it's exciting to see, I guess, something hopefully come to life. Could you give us a little bit of background, I guess, on what do you think the original vision of the WFA mission was, where you think we're at now, and why ISBA's got involved?
Thanks, Gai. So, like you, I started my career in television just over 20 years ago, and actually working in broadcast strategy and research. And actually the thing I couldn't believe when I joined from retail was how much data the TV industry had. I mean, it was extraordinary. I also couldn't believe how little of it was ever surfaced into boardrooms to inform decisions. And actually, I like to think one of the things I spent a lot of my time at the BBC doing was trying to bring audience data into decision-making processes, and particularly about where money was spent and how it was allocated. In the case of the BBC in relation to commissioning rather than media spend. But as we both have sort of noticed, this has been a problem for a long, long time. And I think it's important that the WFA have taken such a fundamental look at the issue. And I think starting with an advertiser association who's coming at this very much from a neutral perspective in terms of just wanting to get the most value for media spend in a way that's agnostic as consumer behavior changes and technology changes has been really, really important to the approach. And I think that's been recognized by the industry. And I think the great thing about the WFA approach is it's a broad review involving marketers, agencies, broadcasters, platforms, and it's a global initiative. It reflects the fact that increasingly media is spent to strategies that sit across multiple markets and on platforms and indeed TV networks that have global ownership and reach. So I think that the combination of a major collaboration and a global perspective is really fundamental to what's being developed.
And ISBA's got involved in what way? What do you plan to do now with this framework that's been set up?
Yeah, so I think ISBA have some bragging rights in the sense that they were kind of pushing away at this problem a couple of years ago, and were very involved then with the WFA in terms of scaling the thinking. And where we are now is that Origin, which is the project I run for ISBA, is intended as one of two global blueprints for the WFA approach. So Origin in the UK, and then work that the ANA are doing in the US. And the hope, I guess, is that we can do some work in the UK that, as far as possible, scales into other markets. So as we think about this, and not just what we're doing, but how we're doing it, we're trying to think of ways in which we can make this work accessible to other markets, so that we can help kickstart a broader global set of movements.
We've seen, I guess, frameworks or very high level, dare I say, narratives come out on cross-media measurement before. And they've always seemed to fall over when you actually go, well, how do I build for that? I guess before we talk about even building for it, even going back to buy and sell side having quite different language. So cross-media measurement to a publisher is their own environments, and to an advertiser, it's obviously their own activity. Do you feel, in terms of the work that's been done to date with the WFA working group, everyone's very clear on what metrics and what you're trying to build actually is?
I think there was a period probably about a year ago where that felt like a sort of uncomfortable negotiation, because advertisers had a sort of long list of things they wanted. Platforms and broadcasters had a set of conventions about how they did things, and so it was a standoff. This is what, as the sell side, we'd be prepared to offer, and then this is what, as the buy side, we might be prepared to accept. And I think one of the best things about the WFA approach is that there was a sort of moment 12 months ago where that whole conversation was swept aside, and the provocation was put back to marketers to say, what do you need? Fundamentally, what do you need? Whether it's feasible, legal, in terms of privacy law and so on and so forth, or practically delivered, doesn't matter. And the advertiser North Star grew out of that, which is in the WFA framework. The advertiser North Star grew out of that very clear-headed, far-sighted goal for what was meant by media measurement. And it's a very ambitious list of requirements. And I think what that's enabled then is the industry, the sell-side industry, to say, okay, we can work towards that, but there have to be some guardrails around, for example, privacy and privacy law. The industry as a whole wants to see trust and transparency, and then beyond that, there has to be a sense of a roadmap. So yes, of course, we all want everything, but day one, what are our priorities? And that's again where, with this framework and with the work we're trying to do with Origin, we're trying to be very focused on immediately what are the things that we believe that we can deliver that give the most value to marketers.
And what are those?
Very simple words. A focus on reach and frequency in the first instance, with Richard, the ambition then beyond that comes effectiveness.
And is that for TV, video, digital media? What's the scope?
Right. So reaching from a metrics perspective, reach and frequency, and then from a media perspective, TV and display. And then, you can imagine, you then think about other media, out of home, audio, et cetera, as you go forward. And I think, we'll get into the how and the technology, I'm sure, in a second, but in terms of the architecture that we want to develop, technical architecture, my challenge has always been, okay, we can focus on day one requirements, but we need a solution and we need an architecture that will scale across multiple media and will scale to multiple metrics. And so trying to think about an overall technical framework that's future-proof, while at the same time being super clear about what we want to deliver day one and being kind of pragmatic about that. I think that's the trick to the work that we're doing right now.
Okay, so that's identifying what's needed. In terms of data inputs, What are you imagining needs to be either come from existing currencies, existing first-party data sets? What are the inputs going to look like?
Yeah, and I mean, I come at this from a sort of business strategy background and having run a technology business for the last 8 or so years. So I'm really comfortable with the sort of business challenge, and I'm reasonably comfortable with the kind of tech architecture. I think what's been eye-opening for me is how, getting my head further under the hood of the various different the value propositions, if you like, of each of the different platforms. And I think that the trick to this is respecting the differential value of each different media. And the television industry makes a very strong case as to why television's special and different. I don't think the television industry itself quite appreciates how passionately each of the digital platforms feel that way about their own platforms in respect to the other digital platforms, never mind in respect to television. So I think, therefore, one of the things we have to be sensitive to is, of course, every media has its own particular differentiated value, and that quite often is reflected in different metrics or the relatively different importance of different metrics. And so I think one thing that's key to all of this is that marketers can look at a data set that gives them a picture across media, but that also allows them to build a plan, a campaign that makes the most of each different media and allows those different media to be bought and used in the right ways to deliver the different objectives of a campaign. So what does that mean? I think that means that we need a measurement system that does give us some consistency across platforms and allows for a sort of common view, if you like, a definition in respect of core metrics, but which also reflects the fact that, of course, anyone buying media has a very sophisticated set of tools and techniques already, and they need to be able to see how the differential value of different media is brought to bear, whether that's, a duration weighted approach to TV, more of a kind of instant reach building approach into some of the digital platforms, and those different conventions around different media and how they're measured have to be respected in the system that's built.
And are you talking about reach and frequency metrics, both from a content as well as an ad point of view? So a campaign point of view as well as an environment point of view?
Yeah, so the North Star is clear that this has to be editorial as content as well as campaign. And I think, going back to what I was saying earlier about the value of different media, Twitter, Snap, the context of those platforms in terms of not just the audiences they deliver, but the nature of the engagement of those audiences is critical to their value and their position in the media landscape. So respecting context is important. Now, that said, capturing content measurement and defining that and the nature of some of those platforms is really tough. So I think, again, day one, we will focus on campaign delivery, but the architecture is being developed to capture content as well.
I guess some of the sort of the more currency products have that sort of overarching, or single source panels have a bit more of that environmental top line story for planners anyway.
Yeah, and just in the same way, I guess a cross-media solution that's built as this is on a fusion method with a panel, you can capture that contextual data more easily, more quickly for some media than you can for others. So, in Australia, if a day one requirement was to capture content context for television, that's perfectly feasible. So I think it's going to be up to each market to make decisions about the relative priority of what's measured as you look at your plan for the work.
So that's the input side of things. And you're talking very much up front about privacy compliant way of managing and bringing this to life. So from a solution point of view, what are you trying to build something? Are you trying to put parameters around what's built, or what are you trying to build, Richard?
So I think I think in every market, the answer to that question is going to be a little bit different, depending on what's there already and who runs it, and what scope there is to evolve existing propositions. I think it's easy to see any new proposal as being, by its nature, a greenfield. Right? You have to raise the ground and start again. I don't think that's necessary. And what's being proposed at the WFA sort of technical proposal level, architectural level, is a fusion of taking existing first-party data and a single source panel, using that to build a virtual model of the population, and then enabling publishers to run their live data sets against that virtual population to pick up reach and frequency across multiple platforms, and hence deduplicate. And I think it's going to vary by market. The intention is absolutely that it's a system that should enable current and ongoing first-party data to be incorporated. I think when we think about kind of a single source panel to power that, or to act as a single source of truth, my expectation would be that would be an existing panel in most markets. So I think the idea here is to come up with an approach that fuses existing data sources, not kind of creating, as I say, it's not a question of kind of raising the ground and building something new. We're too far into this for that to be the right approach.
It's going to be some good work for us as smart statisticians and data fusion people.
Yeah,
that's great.
Absolutely.
And in terms of the development of this, so there's been this large working group coming out of the WFA. There's been a lot of heavy lifting already done, trying to work out if data can, I guess, be fused in this sort of privacy compliant way. The rumours and whispers that have hit the Australian market is that the people who have got the resources to help support build this have been really heavily involved. Do you feel like this is being built out as a solution that's inclusive enough for all different media players of different sizes?
So I think there was definitely a kind of moment in the WFA process where, having had advertisers, marketers involved very closely in defining the North Star, there was a sort of pause where and now what do we do question was kind of hanging in the ether. And the key challenge actually that the WFA faced in an implementation was, if we were talking about a solution that leveraged first-party data, be that data from the digital platforms or BVOD data from broadcasters, the first question that arises is around privacy, and how is that, and not even just individual privacy, but also ensuring that multiple data sets from multiple platforms could be combined. And you get into kind of antitrust issues as well as privacy issues, right? So, which is very serious stuff for a director of any company will know. So it was inevitable, I guess, that the problem that was put at the front of the queue was solving for privacy, and the people best placed to solve for privacy were the companies with the most first-party data. So the initial thinking done for the WFA about a fusion model was done by some of the digital platforms. And I think when that was then shared and presented back to the industry, one of the questions that was asked was, well, hang on, this doesn't feel like it was kind of a TV process that came out of the TV industry. It feels like it came out of the digital platform industry. And actually at ISBA, we kind of said, well, look, that was always true. That wasn't a kind of, that wasn't surprise. That was where the thinking came from, correct. So how do we now continue a process that adds the TV dimension to the story, which was left as a sort of incomplete part of the solution? So what we've been doing in the UK over the summer is now looking at how do you make sure that the solution is properly reflective of all media. We've been looking at how you respect the conventions of TV measurement and those metrics. We've been looking at the measurement solutions that are necessary to capture TV viewing and how that fusion model would work, and how TV and or TV particularly, works within a virtual ID fusion model. One of the markets that's done more work on that than us is Australia, as it happens. But, we've been looking at that from a bit more from fresh eyes. And so really for us, the period since the WFA peer review process, which was in June, so where are we now, October, has been all about making sure that multiple media, and particularly the TV piece, is in there. And we've brought the experts who have for years done the kind of data science behind the TV measurement and panels in the UK. We've brought them into the program, and they've been working with us to make sure we have that kind of balanced perspective. And that's sort of where we feel we're getting to in terms of the solution that we want to recommend.
And you've had the print guys involved from an ozone point of view as well, I understand?
Yeah, so all of the major UK news brands have been represented by Ozone and Newsworks. So we've had them round the table, and I think they're vital, both in terms of the media that they represent, but also trying to think about a solution and governance for a solution that works for smaller publishers as well as just the big major broadcasters and global media players.
You've got a big project there, Richard. If you were to dream, so what's the timing on, I guess, next steps? These projects can go on a long time. When do you think there would be in the UK at least, a product in market?
Yeah, so we've been trying to run this based on kind of gates. So we've been doing 6-month sprints essentially. And so we're in the second of those. And every time we have a sprint or a phase of work, we set really clear kind of exit goals. So phase 1, the exit goal was, do we have broad consensus on standards, metrics, governance, the partnership group that we want to move forward with? That was in May. This time the goal is, do we believe that we have a technical solution that could work? And we've done huge amounts of more detailed investigation on standards and metrics and the technical approach. That work completes before the end of the year. And the next phase, 6 to 9 months, will be to try and prove that this does work. And we want to build a pilot and a prototype. So the aim would be to try and do that for next summer. I'm not going to commit to any timescales beyond that, although practically speaking, once there's a pilot and a proof of concept, the next stage is then to kind of onboard people into that and start to scale it. And I think that's when the real kind of hard yards begin. So, expect that to be middle end of next year as we start that work. Oh, and I think it's important to take time and bring people on the journey as part of what we're doing.
We're watching closely. We're obviously a smaller market with pretty high sort of tagging penetration and collaboration. So we'll definitely be watching. However many more gates you need to go through. Imagine, you're a exhausted but happy project director, and this thing is now live and it's being used by major advertisers as well as media owners. What do you think people will do differently? So obviously there'll be more clarity. Do you think it'll change the market in any way?
Yeah, well, I think the market is changing, right? So I think we need to be a bit careful. The market is changing so fast and so fundamentally. It's also being subjected to external shocks, the most obvious one being around COVID-19. And I think actually I look at it a bit differently in the sense that without a proper cross-media measurement system, we're flying blind. We don't know enough, or as much as we should, about how changing technology is driving changes in media consumption. We're doing a much better job of kind of pretending we know what's going on, and there's a lot of talk. So for me, this is more kind of this is the cart, not the horse, right? And we need to know what's going on out there. And be able to observe patterns of behavior as they change, in order to kind of insulate media spend against changing audience behavior. So I think, ultimately the goal here is it's around efficiency of spend, and it's also about a better consumer experience. Be that about frequency or whatever, or just a more effective kind of relationship between consumers and brands. So it's economic efficiency, it's a better consumer experience. And then the other thing I think we kind of miss out sometimes is, this is all media investment that drives, or this is all media spend that drives or underpins investment in content. And, certainly in the UK, and I come from a public service background at the BBC, if this generates more money at the end of the day onto screens and into content, that's really important, really powerful. And I think that's something we mustn't lose sight of either as we think about the work. So yeah, it sort of feels like it's a worthwhile, but I would say now kind of imperative cause that we need the whole industry to get behind.
That's a beautiful note to finish on. Thank you so much for your time today. We're looking forward to hearing more about it. Maybe this time next year we'll have an update. You'll have some pilot data for us.
Well, hopefully not. Maybe, definitely. I'd love to.
Beautiful. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.